player with that much attention fall that far, that fast. This wasn't just a tough day on the course. Golf is a game of bad rounds, missed putts, and unlucky breaks, but this felt different. The numbers told a story that was impossible to ignore. Round after round, the gap between Charlie and the rest of the field didn't shrink. It grew. Each scorecard painted a clearer picture, and it wasn't one anyone was prepared to see. For a player surrounded by so much belief, this wasn't just a stumble. It looked like a collapse. And the deeper you looked, the harder it became to explain. Because this wasn't just about where he finished, it was about what it meant. About expectations, pressure, and a name that carries more. To understand what just happened to Charlie Woods, you have to start long before that final scorecard was posted. Because in golf, some players carry a bag, and others carry a legacy. And Charlie, he's been carrying one of the heaviest names in sports since the day he was born. The name Woods doesn't just echo through clubhouses, it defines them, and that changes everything. His father, Tiger Woods, didn't just dominate golf, he transformed it. 15 major championships, iconic comebacks, and a level of global fame that turned quiet fairways into stadiums. Tiger didn't just win tournaments, he rewrote what greatness looked like. And from the moment Charlie first picked up a club, the question was never if he would play golf, but whether he could ever live up to that shadow. But here's the reality most people don't see. Charlie Woods has never had the luxury of being just a kid learning the game. Every swing, every round, every appearance has been watched, recorded, analyzed. Cameras follow him, crowds whisper, headlines form before he even tees off. Because when your last name is Woods, every shot feels like it matters more than it should. And with that comes expectation. Not quiet hope, but loud, constant pressure. The belief that he might be the next Tiger. The assumption that greatness is inevitable. But golf doesn't work that way. It never has. Even legends struggled before they conquered, and even prodigies fall before they rise. The difference is, most players get to fail in silence. Charlie never has that option. So, when he steps onto a course, he isn't just competing against the field, he's competing against history, against comparisons, against a version of greatness that may never be matched. He's not just trying to win, he's trying to prove something to the world watching him, and that's where everything starts to shift. Because pressure like that doesn't just follow you, it eventually catches up to you. So, the question now becomes impossible to ignore. What actually went wrong? Because performances like this don't just happen without a reason. Not at this level, not in a tournament like Sage Valley, and definitely not to a player like Charlie Woods. This wasn't just a cold streak or a couple of unlucky breaks. This felt deeper, more complex, and far more revealing than a simple bad week. The first place many people look is pressure. And not just normal competitive pressure, the kind that builds quietly and sharpens your focus. This is something else entirely. This is the pressure of expectation, of legacy, of knowing that every swing is being measured against a name that changed the sport forever. For Charlie, every shot isn't just about execution, it's about comparison. And when that weight starts to build, even the smallest mistake can feel 10 times heavier than it should. But pressure alone doesn't tell the whole story. There's also experience, or rather, the lack of it. Sage Valley isn't just any event, it's a battlefield filled with the best junior players in the world, many of whom have been preparing for moments like this for years. The margins are razor thin, the conditions are demanding, and the mental side of the game becomes just as important as the physical. For a young player still developing, that environment can expose weaknesses quickly. Then there's the level of competition itself. This wasn't a local tournament or a casual round. It was elite, unforgiving, and relentless. Every player in that field earned their spot. Every round required precision. And when you're even slightly off, the leaderboard doesn't just reflect it, it amplifies it. And yet, here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because just weeks before this performance, Charlie made a major decision about his future. Committing to college golf, a clear sign that his journey is only beginning, so which raises an even bigger question. Was this collapse a warning sign or just a necessary step in what comes next? In the end, what happened at Sage Valley may feel like the headline, but it's not the full story. Because careers, especially in golf, are not defined by a single tournament. They're built over time, shaped by setbacks, refined through struggle, and ultimately revealed in how a player responds when things don't go according to plan. And for Charlie Woods, this moment isn't an ending. It's a beginning in disguise. It's easy to look at a leaderboard and draw conclusions, to see a last place finish and assume something is wrong. But the reality is far more complicated and far more human. Every great golfer, including Tiger Woods himself, has faced moments where the game simply didn't cooperate, rounds where nothing clicked, weeks where confidence slipped just enough to change everything. The difference is those moments didn't define them. They shaped them. And that's where growth begins. Not in victory, but in adversity. In the uncomfortable realization that talent alone isn't enough, that the mental side of the game matters just as much as the physical, that learning how to lose is often the first step toward learning how to win. For a young player like Charlie, this experience, however difficult, may end up being one of the most important chapters in his entire journey, because the path forward is still wide open. With a college golf commitment already secured, new opportunities are waiting, new environments, new challenges, a chance to develop away from the constant spotlight, to refine his game and to build confidence on his own terms. And sometimes stepping back from the noise is exactly what a player needs to move forward. So maybe the real story isn't about what just happened, but about what happens next. Because greatness has never been about avoiding failure, it's about rising after it. And for Charlie Woods, the next chapter hasn't been written yet, which might be the most important part of all. The stage for what happened next could not have been bigger. The Junior Invitational at Sage Valley isn't just another tournament, it's one of the most prestigious proving grounds in all of junior golf. This is where future stars introduce themselves to the world, where elite young players separate themselves from the rest, and where expectations meet reality in the harshest possible way. And this time, all eyes were locked on Charlie Woods, but not for the reasons anyone expected. From the very first round, something felt off. Not dramatically at first, just subtle mistakes, missed opportunities, shots that didn't quite land the way they should. But in a field this competitive, small errors don't stay small for long. One bad hole turns into two. One missed putt turns into a pattern. And before anyone could fully process it, the leaderboard began to tell a completely different story than the one people came to see. Round after round, things kept going wrong. Drives drifted, putts refused to drop, momentum never came. Instead of climbing the leaderboard, Charlie kept slipping further down it, until the numbers became impossible to ignore. By the end of the tournament, he had finished in last place, posting a total score of around plus 26. Not just behind the leaders, but significantly behind nearly to make a statement early, suggested another. But Charlie wasn't done. Hole after hole, he was making decisions that seemed to contradict everything anyone knew about percentage golf, about playing the odds, about the conservative approach that usually wins tournaments. This wasn't just aggressive golf, this was something else entirely, and nobody could quite figure out what they were watching. Here's where it gets really interesting, where the performance shifted from unusual to absolutely shocking. The back nine didn't bring a sound, correction, or a return to conventional play. If anything, Charlie doubled down on the aggression. On the 13th, facing a 220-yard approach over water to a tucked pin, the safe play was obvious to everyone watching. Layup. Take your par. Move on. Every caddy in America would have handed their player a wedge for that shot and told them to play smart. But Charlie asked for his 3-wood. His caddy reportedly hesitated, started to say something, then just handed him the club. What happened next had jaws dropping across every clubhouse and sports bar showing the tournament. Charlie took his stance, and with absolute commitment, pure conviction in every fiber of his being, he swung. The ball launched on a trajectory that seemed impossible, fighting against wind and physics and common sense. For a moment, it looked like disaster. The ball appeared to be drifting toward the water, and you could almost hear the collective intake of breath from everyone watching. Then something remarkable happened. The ball caught an updraft, rode it perfectly, and landed on the green, rolling to within 15 feet of the cup. The gallery went absolutely wild, but the golf purists, they were conflicted. Yes, it was an incredible shot, but was it smart? Was it sustainable? Was this the kind of golf that wins tournaments? Or was this a highlight reel wrapped around a ticking time bomb of eventual disaster? Charlie's demeanor through all of this was perhaps the most shocking element of the entire round. There was no visible stress, no second guessing, no apparent concern about what anyone thought. He moved from shot to shot with purpose, making aggressive choices that seemed to come from some internal compass that only he could see. It was almost as if he'd decided to play a completely different game than everyone else on the course, operating by rules that existed only in his own head. The 15th hole brought the moment that has already been memed and turned into 1,000 hot takes across golf social media. A drivable par 4, but with trouble everywhere. Bunkers left, water right, and a green that's notoriously difficult to hold even with a short iron. The conventional play, the play that every golf instructor in the world teaches, is to hit an iron off the tee, leave yourself a comfortable wedge distance, and take your birdie chance from there. Safe, smart, percentage golf. Charlie pulled out his driver again. His playing partners exchanged glances. The crowd murmured nervously. Even the announcers went silent for a moment, as if they couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. And then Charlie slightly unleashed a drive that was simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. The ball flew on a thread, barely clearing the bunkers, flirting with disaster on every inch of its flight path before landing softly on the front of the green and rolling to within birdie range. The social media reaction was instant and completely divided. One camp celebrated the fearlessness, the confidence, the refusal to play scared. This is what golf needs, they declared. A young player who isn't afraid to attack, who plays with his heart on his sleeve, who brings excitement back to a sport that's become too conservative and calculated. The other camp was equally vocal in their criticism. Reckless, they said. Unsustainable. He's going to crash and burn playing like this. Someone needs to rein him in before he ruins his career with this kind of approach. But here's what made this performance truly shocking and what nobody could argue with. It kept working. Not every shot was perfect. Not every gamble paid off. But Charlie maintained a level of execution that made his aggressive strategy viable and competitive. He was living on the edge, playing golf that looked reckless on paper but somehow worked in reality. And as the round progressed, you could see a transformation happening not just in his game, but in the narrative surrounding him. By the time Charlie finished his round, the golf world was in complete chaos trying to process what they'd witnessed. His score was competitive, good enough to keep him in contention, but that almost felt secondary to the larger question hanging over everything. What had everyone just watched? Was this a kid rebelling against the conservative approach he'd been taught? Was it a calculated strategy to separate himself from the pack? Was it pressure manifesting in unexpected ways? Or was this simply Charlie Woods announcing to the world that he was going to play golf his way, consequences be damned? Golf analysts immediately began comparing this performance to pivotal moments in the careers of other greats. Some drew parallels to young Phil Mickelson's aggressive style that eventually won him majors and made him one of the most exciting players to watch. Others compared it to players who flamed out trying to do too much, who let ego and emotion override smart course management and destroyed promising careers. The debate raged on every sports network, every golf podcast, every corner of the internet where people discuss the game. But perhaps the most shocking element wasn't what happened on the course. It was the conversation this performance sparked about pressure, expectations, and identity. For years, Charlie Woods has existed in this impossible space between being his own person and being Tiger Woods' son. Every swing has been compared. Every decision has been analyzed through the lens of his father's legacy. Every tournament result gets measured against impossible standards that no teenager should have to carry. And maybe, just maybe, what we witnessed wasn't recklessness or strategy or pressure cracking. Maybe it was simply a young man declaring his independence in the only language he knows, golf. Think about the psychological weight Charlie has carried since childhood. Imagine being constantly measured against arguably the greatest golfer of all time, not by strangers alone, but by your own bloodline. Imagine every coach, every analyst, every fan having an opinion about how you should play, what you should do, who you should become. The question now isn't whether Charlie played well or poorly. The question is what this means for his future. Will he continue down this aggressive path? Will coaches and advisors pull him back toward conventional approaches? Will this moment be remembered as the turning point where Charlie Woods found his identity? Or will it be a cautionary tale about a talented kid who self-destructed trying to prove a point? Nobody knows the answers yet, but one thing is absolutely certain. Charlie Woods just delivered the most shocking, most debated, most analyzed performance in recent junior golf history. And whether you think he's a genius or reckless, whether you loved it or hated it, you can't deny that he's got everyone's attention. The kid who's lived in the shadow of greatness just stepped into his own spotlight, and the golf world will never look at Charlie Woods quite the same way again. Teenager, this would be career-changing. For the son of Tiger Woods, it meant stepping into a spotlight that had been waiting for him since the day he first picked up a club. Tournament directors took notice, invitations to elite championships started coming in, and fans began to speculate about what could come next. And yet, beyond the numbers, beyond the trophies, the real story was in the atmosphere. Crowds followed every hole, media lined up for quotes, and fellow players felt the weight of his presence. In one weekend, Charlie didn't just win a title, he shifted the narrative. For years, the question was if he could ever emerge from his father's shadow. Now, after this breakthrough performance, the golf world had its answer. The celebration had barely settled when another voice entered the conversation. And it wasn't just any voice. It was Jack Nicklaus, the Golden Bear himself, a man who knows more than most about what it means to dominate golf and live under the relentless eye of the public. Where others were cheering, Nicklaus brought something different, a warning. His words didn't come from cynicism or doubt, but from a lifetime of experience watching the game, the fame, and the weight that comes with both. The road ahead is tough, Nicklaus cautioned. He wasn't talking about competition alone, he meant the invisible battles, the kind that can't be measured on a scorecard. For the child of a sporting icon, the journey is never just about skill. It's about enduring constant comparisons, impossible expectations, and a spotlight that never fades. These challenges, Nicklaus knows, can break even the most talented young athletes if they aren't prepared. Nicklaus's warning wasn't abstract. It came from a deeply personal place. Decades earlier, his own son Gary was thrust into fame at just 16, plastered on the cover of Sports Illustrated with the bold label, "The Next Nicklaus." Instead of launching a legendary career, that moment became a turning point, and not for the better. The pressure, the endless attention, the sense that every swing was under scrutiny, it all became too much. Gary eventually stepped away from the competitive grind, proof that talent alone doesn't protect you from the weight of expectation. That's why Nicklaus sees Charlie's moment as both inspiring and dangerous. The victory shows his potential, the attention shows the challenge ahead, and in today's era where social media amplifies every highlight, every mistake, and every opinion, the intensity is magnified beyond what Gary ever faced. Charlie's rise is undeniable, but so is the spotlight. Nicklaus's words are both a caution and a gift, a reminder that the path to greatness